I'm Becky Mayer, and welcome to Transitions, Body, Mind, and Spirit. Transitions, how do things change in your life? How many different paths have you gone? I like to use the metaphor of triathlons, which is something that I still do. First, when a triathlon, you swim, then you go to a transition area, get ready for the next part, and then you bike, and then you go to transition area again, toss the bike away, and then you're going to run. And that is just a great metaphor for what happens to us in life. And I have a very unique guest here today, Kathy Cloninger. And we are going to start from her amazing life in Austin, Texas at the Rubaiyat, serving drinks, and then go all the way to being the CEO of the Girl Scouts nationally, headquarters in New York. And I just find it is a fascinating story. Kathy Cloninger, welcome. So glad you are here.
Thanks, Becky. It's great to be here.
Yes. Could you please explain, you were 18 in Austin, Texas. What's happening? You're doing what? And what is the Rubaiyat?
Yeah.
To give us
and
some
actually,
juice.
it was Dallas, but you know, it's all Texas related. Yeah.
Sorry, Dallas.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just have to back up just a tad because
Yes.
when I graduated from high school, most girls were like on a college path, and you know, you're thinking the whole time about I got to go get a college degree, and then I've got to be somebody, and I've got to support myself, and all of that. No one in my family in Dallas, not my immediate family or cousins, and you know, the huge 50-person extended family, no one went to college. So I graduated from high school going, well, now what am I going to do?
So you did not, nobody in your family had gone to college.
No.
And you graduated high school, so you were not on a college
Straight
path?
A. I had a 4-point grade, but I still, I mean, my college counselor told me, well, you know, girl, why don't you go to a good secretarial school and get a trade? And there's, you know, nothing wrong with secretarial school at all. But I did. I got kicked out of secretarial school, but that's another story we won't go into. But all of that to say, I was really very sort of meandering after high school, and yet I was, you know, the high school cheerleader and, you know, all of that. But I didn't have you know, a particular path. So I loved folk music, and I went to a famous club called the Rubaiyat in 1969.
Wow.
Went into the restroom, and there was a sign in the restroom that said waitress needed. And something went off. I just, a light bulb, ding ding, and I pulled that sign off of the bathroom wall, and I took it to the manager, and I said, you've just hired your waitress.
Wow, that's taking the ball in the hands and yes.
Yeah.
So you got hired.
I did.
And then you had no experience?
No, I never waited tables before, and I had, you know, barely ever been to a folk music club. I had just turned 18, but this was a, you know, a major happening music scene in Texas. Michael Martin Murphey, who went on to be, you know, fairly successful here in Nashville. A young man named B.W. Stevenson, who wrote My Maria, that Brooks and Dunn recorded. I mean, this was the burgeoning folk music scene in Dallas, and I just fell into the lap of it, and it was the first sort of transition to adulthood for me, and quite serendipitous.
And so how long did you do the work as a waitress there?
About 5 years. It was, yeah.
Really?
I stayed around. And it opened doors to me because I had a, you know, very working class sort of traditional family upbringing, nothing very exotic at all. And here I was in this great folk music scene, but still not really sure what to do with my life, not having chosen a college track. But because I was now part of this incredible new music scene with some connection to national folk music and, you know, people of very interesting character, but it also made me curious about the world in a different way from being just a, you know, traditional high school student. And that made me personally interested in learning. So while I didn't have a career plan or a college plan, I did decide to go to community college and I started my college track at the Dallas County Community College. And so I waited tables by night and went to community college by day.
Wow, wow. And you just kind of, because this opened up your world, you just thought, well, maybe college. But that hadn't really been on your radar.
No, not at all. In fact, I was pretty sure I would never go to college. I mean, I looked around my family and, you know, nobody else went to college. And
why should you?
yeah, why should I?
Wow.
So, and even when I started taking my first course at community college, it was not about getting a degree for me. It was about learning. And I took art history, and I took political science, and Spanish, and I mean, I just took stuff.
Because you wanted to know.
I just wanted to know. But I still didn't think of myself as a career potential young woman. I thought of myself as having a pretty cool life, waiting tables, and I was learning on the side. And finally, after about 2 years at community college, and I had taken, I don't know, 30 hours or something.
Everything you can.
Yeah, really. And one of my teachers said, you know, Kathy, have you ever thought about going to get a 4-year degree? And I said, well, you know, why not?
Wow.
So I transferred in from the community college to North Texas State University in Denton, Texas, and I decided I would, you know, try a college degree.
Well, how were you paying for college?
Waiting tables.
So you paid
I never took out a loan.
Wow.
And my parents, I mean, we didn't have the kind of money to send kids to college. And because nobody else was going to college, I mean, it just wasn't in our family culture that, you know, kids grow up, go to college, and somehow the parents have to, you know, they couldn't afford it. My parents were great working class folks, but, you know, didn't have a college plan. So I just paid a course at a time, waited tables, and, you know, just kept at it until all of a sudden I realized, you know, I've got a bachelor's degree.
Wow.
Yeah.
And your bachelor's degree was in what?
Counseling psychology.
And why did you pick counseling psychology when you barely knew you even wanted a degree?
I know. It was a great question. I'm not sure. I mean, it was very, the other sort of trend in my life, I think, as I look back now on what's happened and, you know, how did it all begin, following my intuition and, you know, sort of doing things by gut instinct is very much the way I think I carved my life.
It's funny, you say doing things by your gut instinct and you think you carved your life. That's kind of very interesting, you know, kind of that combo. Okay,
yeah,
all right.
But I've always been interested in sort of how people behave and what makes us tick. And I've always had a lot of empathy and a desire to do good in the world. You know, maybe it was from my Girl Scout troop experience as a kid.
So you were in the Girl
I was in the
Scouts
Girl Scouts
as a child?
As a child. My mother was my leader. And Girl Scouts, I think, is formative in helping girls care about the world around them. Community service and giving back is very much a part of the Girl Scout world. So I wasn't intentional about it. I never put that together when I was 18 and 20 trying to decide what to do in college, but psychology seemed interesting to me. And again, I started pursuing that degree without thinking about, well, I'm off to a psychology career. And, you know, I can see, I never saw my life 20 years ahead. I pretty much saw my life in, you know, 3-month chunks.
Right.
Living it fully and just absorbing it as I went.
So you finally got your 4-year degree. You were still working
I stopped waiting tables right before I got my degree.
All right.
And went to work for, it was called the Pilot Home for Girls.
Pilot Home?
Pilot Home for Girls.
Okay.
It was a halfway house for, at the time we called mildly retarded women who had been institutionalized. I mean, this was in the 70s, when if you had any kind of handicap, you were likely, especially if it was, you know, connected with mental disability at all, you were institutionalized. It was not unusual. So my agency was on the forefront of helping the institutions realize that many of the women who had been there for years had the capacity to live on their own. So we were moving women out of institutions and into community living. And I went to work as a program director.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. So how long were you the program director of this helping mentally disabled, partially, whatever the right term is?
Mildly retarded
retarded.
What we called it at the time.
Right.
I think we've evolved a lot in terms of how we respect people with different kinds of mental abilities. But yeah, it was a great job, and I was there a couple of years, and then went to work for the Job Corps, and all of this. My career began evolving, and I continued to be interested in learning and education. So as I built my career, ultimately it took me to the YWCA.
YWCA, still in Dallas?
Still in Dallas,
okay.
And I was the director of the North Dallas YWCA, and I had decided to get my master's degree.
Ah, wow.
So I was still working full-time, going to school part-time, and 5 years later, I got my master's degree.
Got your master's degree?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so so you have transitioned from, I don't even know if I'm going to go to college, to okay, I'll go to college, I'll go to community college, and then now you have a master's degree, and then you're in a position of authority, and then what next?
It was interesting. So I was finishing up the master's degree, having stayed in Dallas, grew up in Dallas, stayed in Dallas, did my education in Dallas. But for some reason, when I finished that master's, which I never ever thought I would have done, I felt like, well, now, this is another transition opportunity. This is another chance to, have a new life. And there's a whole side story of my partner in life, Mike Williams, who's playing folk music, and he's very much a part of the excitement and
of the music and the business
So Mike and I were figuring out, well, now what do we do? And I had this new degree, and I wanted to sort of test my resume again, not having okay, I've done this, and now I'm going to move to step B and move to step C, and ultimately my life is going to look like whatever. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. So I was scanning newspapers, and I was interested in Colorado because I'd never lived in Colorado, but it's a beautiful state. And I saw an ad in the paper, and it was what's called a blind ad. So it literally says, youth director needed in an agency in northern Colorado, P.O. Box.
Didn't say what is the organization.
And they called them blind ads. I don't know if we even still do that or not, but it was a blind ad. So I thought, well, I'll just test my resume out. And I sent the resume off to Colorado, and it turned out to be the Girl Scouts.
The Girl Scouts.
The Girl Scouts of Northern Colorado.
That's how.
1982.
Now, remember, back when we first introduced this, that she became the CEO of all the Girl Scouts, but this is how it first began.
Right,
so,
yeah.
Yeah.
So Mike and I bundled up and moved to, northern Colorado in my little, beat-up Volkswagen Bug.
And we have a photo of you and Mike in a tent. Now, was that, and Mike had hair down to here, and was that before the Colorado thing or
right
after?
Before.
Right before.
Yes, we had, sort of as part of, getting to know each other, and, this period of, again, transition, between his career as a folk singer, and he had sort of decided to stop and look at, a different approach to his life, and I had finished my master's degree. So we took off and lived in a tent for 6 months. For 6 months,
living in a tent for 6 months. Now, kind of the hippie life, and just
appropriate for Girl Scouts, though. I mean, the future CEO of Girl Scouts of the USA starts her career by spending 6 months living in a tiny little dome tent
Wow.
from West Coast to East Coast, not fancy camping at all.
Right, with a music man.
With a music man.
With a music man,
Exactly.
a highly successful in the college market music man,
Yeah.
but it's like, let's just have fun for 6 months. What a great, I love that.
Exactly.
What a great idea.
Yeah.
What is your job there?
The executive director of the Girl Scouts of Northern Colorado,
So
based
that
in Greeley.
was how many Girl Scouts? I mean, how big is that? I mean,
That was a small council. It was, I would say, about $1 million budget. We served about 5,000 girls.
that's small, 5,000. Okay.
Yeah.
And somehow or other, you don't even mention the skills it takes to oversee something that large. There's all these skills that obviously you continued to grow and it expanded. But where do you credit getting those skills from? Where did that come from?
Curiosity and, just a keen interest in sort of learning by doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because I always worked while I went to college, I was always putting into practice what I'm learning. So I'm like reading management books and reading everything I can get my hands on. And then because I'm working, I go immediately from book to application, to trying things out and testing things and just doing it as I went. And again, it was so many people, I feel like, especially in my group of colleagues, they seem to have had a much more sort of driven path to leadership. I meandered my way to leadership. I mean, I just loved it as I went.
I think the love of what you were doing, and you kept on studying and studying, well, how can I do this better? How can I do this better? And going, let's try this. And, oh, that doesn't work. And so, but obviously it worked. It really worked. So how long in Colorado?
A couple of years.
Okay.
And then I'll fast forward. So,
Okay.
Yeah, so then we went to the West Coast. We went to near Palo Alto for a while. And then
In Girl Scouts?
In Girl Scouts.
Okay.
And then San Antonio, Texas, as the CEO for Girl Scouts in San Antonio.
Okay.
In the mid 80s to early 90s. And then I took a little bit of an off path to the Kellogg Foundation as a program officer up in Battle Creek, Michigan.
Okay.
It was a wonderful experience. I loved foundation work, but Battle Creek is small, and
It's not a Music Man place.
It's not a Music Man place at all. And he had been in and out of Nashville with his career. He used to write for John Denver, and he had his own record for a while. And really, in fact, he met you.
He met me in
Nashville. Exactly. So he was feeling a pull to Nashville.
Yeah.
And both of us were saying, well, what am I going to do if I go to Nashville? I mean,
Oh.
I've got this great job with Kellogg. So he said, well, I'll go to Nashville and, I'll talk to people and tell them what a great CEO you are. And serendipity happened again. I mean, the CEO of Girl Scouts in Nashville, Sue Peters, who had been here for 2 decades, a
2
fabulous
decades.
woman, fabulous
20
woman.
years in the
23
position.
years, and she retired, and the job came open. And I applied along with a whole bunch of other people, and fate happened, and we were supposed to be here. So I got the job. We came here. Mike and I settled. We were here for 10 years.
10 years
We had a
of CEO in Nashville.
Fabulous time.
Yes, and it incorporated your job, and also Mike Williams had a wonderful pickin' party at your house that helped so many people before it was even cool to have pickin' parties. It's kind of like the Bluebird in a house. The house concerts is free. You guys just resurrected
magic.
it again. It was magic.
Yeah.
So many songwriters got a place to connect, and struggling and not struggling, and just a wonderful creative thing for the your creative partner, and of course, you loved music from day one, way back when you were 18.
I did. I know. I mean, all of these, it's just weaving together. Life is unfolding, and it's just absolutely wonderful.
And part of this too is that every year you guys would go to the famous Kerrville Folk Festival, which I have been to twice, and there was a real community feel. And so it's amazing to me, you have this dipping of, I can do bureaucracy and I can delegate all these things, and I love music, and I can go and be out in a camper with a bunch of music people and let my hair down.
Yeah. I was not a traditional CEO.
Swim in the river naked if I feel like it. And what a great thing. What a wonderful thing.
Yeah, it was a life. And then, out of the blue, I got a call. The CEO of Girl Scouts of the USA. I'd been here 10 years.
Of the USA.
So the Girl Scouts of the USA.
The big
in
picture.
New York, yeah. Our CEO resigned, and they were doing the big headhunter search for a new national CEO, and I got a call from the headhunter saying, your name is coming up, and we're interested in you applying for the job. And I said, oh no, I love Nashville.
I love Nashville.
You know, I can get to the Kerrville Folk Festival. And, you know, everything's fabulous. So I didn't apply, and they did a search, and they didn't find a candidate. And so they came back to me 6 months or so later, or into the search. And it was right before Mike and I were going to the Kerrville Folk Festival. And I said, you know, I'll have to think about it. So I went to Kerrville, and we were, you know, it's fairly primitive camping. So we're in Kerrville. I called my mentor, Frances Hesselbein, who had been a CEO of Girl Scouts of the USA. I called her from the campground and said, what should I do? And she said, your destiny awaits.
Your destiny awaits?
Yes. You must apply. And there I was. I didn't have my resume, I didn't have technology, there was a deadline on getting the application. So I've got the whole campground. Somebody in our campground was a technology wizard, had a laptop, we plugged in somehow, and we got a friend back in Nashville to go into my computer, get my resume.
Wow.
And we all made it happen from a campground in Texas. I sent it in, and the rest is history. I was hired as the national CEO and spent 8 wonderful years leading a transformation of Girl Scouts of the USA, which I have to say is now in a book called Tough Cookies.
And matter of fact,
I think we happen to have it
we
right
happen to
here.
have Tough Cookies. Where can people buy Tough Cookies?
Amazon.com.
Amazon.com. Kathy Cloninger, Tough Cookies.
All proceeds of the Tough Cookies book goes to Girl Scouts of the USA.
Okay.
So as the author, I donated 100% of the proceeds of the book back to Girl Scouting. And it was, I mean, we did major work returning to leadership as our core foundation for girls, hoping all girls will have the same incredible opportunities that I had as a young woman, right, you know, sort of maneuvering through life, really focusing on leadership as our core. Did major transformation work. A new corporate structure, mergers of councils, a new mission statement. It was a period of great change for girls in an 8-year period, and it's captured in this book, Tough Cookies. Yeah, Girl Scouts has always had a wonderful commitment to diversity, but I like to think we stepped it up. We had outreach to girls whose mothers are in prison, a program called Girl Scouting Beyond Bars. We were in urban public housing communities, on Native American reservations. I mean, really an outreach to make sure that when girls see the Girl Scout organization, from whatever walk of life they come from, they see themselves in Girl Scouting. So it truly is reaching girls all across America.
That's amazing. Now, after 8 years in New York City, your decision to leave the Girl Scouts, now how did that come about? And we have about 3 minutes to get an idea on how that come about in your next transition, because you're no longer the CEO.
Yeah.
Tell us.
Yeah, it was, you know, it is, you know, all of those major transitions are important. And again, it goes back to me in terms of following my gut and my instinct.
Gut and instinct.
Gut and instinct. So, you know, I had been in Girl Scouting by now, you know, almost 30 years as a professional Girl Scouting. So, and I, you know, did an 8-year period of massive change. And we were approaching the 100th anniversary for Girl Scouts. And I felt like what a beautiful moment in time to pass the leadership on to a new generation of leaders. And that was, that would be in itself a great platform to introduce a new CEO. I mean, I could have stayed and, gotten the publicity for the 100th anniversary, but it just seemed to make sense to me. I was ready to move on.
Okay.
I was, quite frankly, tired.
That's a big,
I'd been hitting the
job.
ground 24/7 for 30 years.
And we have pictures of Kathy with the Obamas, which we'll show, and Maya Angelou. I mean, she was in the top tier of meeting all the coolest people in the world, literally.
It was very fast-paced. It was a, almost it felt like it was somebody else's life. It was so amazing to be able to go to the White House and serve with Mrs. Obama on a task group working with our military families, and to be at the White House and to be part of all of the cutting edge work that goes on on behalf of women and girls. So it was absolutely incredible life, but it was hard work. So I felt like I need now, while I'm still young enough and healthy enough, I want a period of my life to travel more, to be with my wonderful partner,
your wonderful
we've
partner.
talked about, and we bought a motorhome, and we're traveling America from coast to coast.
It's a really cool motorhome. I wish it was here. I could show a picture to everybody. It's very wonderful.
And I can have more time to enjoy the music parties that we are doing again now that we're back in Nashville. I always had to go to bed early. And
right, because you had to work.
Now I can be part of the music, and it's free flowing for me. So I've just started this next transition. It's very exciting, and it's also it's interesting to go from being a successful executive to sort of just my own person and carving my own life in a completely different way at age 62.
At age 62, to totally stop the fast pace.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm still, it's yet to be determined what exactly the next 10 years are going to look like. But I know that my gut and instinct are going to lead me in the right direction.
Because that's your gut and your instinct, your entire life has just taken care of you so well.
It has.
Just amazingly so. Well, Kathy Cloninger, I thank you very, very much for being on the show. You are an inspiration. I think anyone who wants to know, well, especially if they have kids and they're going, well, my kid doesn't know what they want to do and they're already 15. Well, just listen to this show and hear about the amazing journey that Kathy Cloninger has been on and all the accomplishments, and she's still in her journey, and it's all exciting. She just got back from the world's best trip to Italy I've ever heard of. So it's just a wonderful thing. And are there any parting thoughts you'd like to give to our audience, any inspirational thoughts, particularly if somebody has an 18-year-old girl, on what do they need to do?
Trust them, encourage. Don't try to make girls determine what their life looks like. Don't be too prescriptive. Just be encouraging and believe in the potential of every girl, and let their lives unravel and be supportive along their journey.
Let their lives unravel. I love that. All right. Thank you very much, Kathy. Thank you. This is Transitions. Thank you very much.